Good. So Louise will join us after she's been for the test that she emailed about for one of her daughters, and I think we're all ready to go. So John Burden's with us, is he? I just need to check. Is John with us?
I'm with you.
Yes, very, very good. So with the usual explanation about the state of play for John and Mike, which is unchanged, and I may say something about that a bit later, but we're all present, and Louise will join, and so we can go into the formal part of the early section. Declarations of interest. Anybody would like to add to the normal set? And then
Michael, sorry, apologies. Just from me, I do have a financial interest in a property that is in Castle Hill, so fairly close to the project that we're looking at later.
okay, thank you.
Sorry, also Chairman, please, John Burden. My standard declaration, because there is a number of items on the agenda that involve Gratian one way or the other. As leader of the authority, I have got no direct or indirect pecuniary interest in them, but I declare the interests I'm involved with the authority. And also on the other matter you just mentioned, just for the information of the committee and the board there, the council has today written to the Minister of State for Housing, expressing our concern that Lauren and myself still, and Mike Whiting from Kent, still haven't been appointed to the board. So
yes,
what that would do, all done in knows.
Yeah, no, very timely, I'm sure. So thank you for noting that. Now we have a really full set of minutes from last time, which I believe should receive general support after they were previously circulated. So are there any points on the minutes, please? No, and then actions have been reported in the set of papers. Ian, there's nothing from you on the actions?
No, they're all up to date, Michael.
So let's go straight to your part 1 report, please, Ian.
Thank you, Michael. Not a huge amount more to add to my written paper. Just in terms of section 1, we do have a very small number of staff that have been going in to the office just one day a week on the grounds for their health and well-being. Just as a general comment, I think I would say, probably in common with other organisations, I think I'm definitely noticing that the impact of this particular lockdown is staff are finding it a bit harder generally. Now, that might be the time of year, dark nights, the second time, I don't know, but I think we're very conscious of that and looking out for one another. But I would definitely say many of us are gritting our teeth and waiting to get through to December the 2nd as quickly as possible. So yeah. In terms of section 2, just to say that there have been some changes reported here around the spending review process, and there's we are now at the point where, if we're only going to get a 1-year allocation, we've been having to look at how we would phase construction projects into sort of discrete elements, so that we would be able to stop some of those if we had to at March 22. It's obviously not the most efficient way to get things built, but it's a necessity if we want to keep some momentum going behind some of the projects. So that's a consequence of there just being the 1-year settlement planned for next year. And that's all I wanted to say in addition to the paper, Michael. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, David Holt.
Yeah, thank you. And Ian, it's probably just worth saying, in one of the other organisations where I sit, we are thinking head on the COVID piece through to January to March, on the recognition that for most of our staff, life will not be a lot rosier pre-Easter or early summer. So we're thinking ahead really about what it means if there are some people who have had an inoculation of one sort or other, some who haven't, and really how people will sustain themselves through what would be pretty dire months of January and February at any time of life, let alone when you're in COVID lockdown number 3. So we're beginning to think about what support we're going to give people and how we're going to manage things where we may have a slightly different differentiation in staff who can come in and those that can't, from that which we've experienced now.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you, David. And if there's any sort of tips or hints or people you can put me in touch with in other organisations, and we do. So I participate in some of the networks that MHLG with their arms length bodies have got to share experiences and what people are doing, and I think that's really helpful. But yeah, no, thank you for that.
Okay, I will get in touch separately on it, Ian.
Thank you.
So over to Mike Whiting now.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to Ian for his report. I just wanted to refer, it's a short line in there about the London resort at 3 and 3-1, and I just wanted to, is there a fuller update of that? I understood there's some work going on between KCC and EDC, DBC and GBC to try to get a joint approach to our response to the planning application, the DCO. I just wonder if there's any further updates on all that, Ian.
Yeah, so and you're right, Mike. Thank you. We have been working collaboratively with the other authorities. Have reported some of that last month. That's continued, and I would say has probably strengthened over the last month or so. So we're in regular contact. Mark Pullen, who's on the call, might be able to say a bit more, but we're in regular contact with KCC as Highway Authority, but also the other statutory responsibilities as well. We think that's really important, that the authorities are sharing information, sharing views. We always set out right at the very beginning to try to make it as efficient as possible for London Resort, apart from anything else, so that they were dealing with a coordinated group of authorities, so we weren't duplicating requests and so on.
Yeah.
We've also appointed recently a resource which we're sharing as well, certainly with Jeremy's council, and I think KCC are very interested in using that resource as well. So yeah, we think it's important, and we continue to do that.
And we might pick up some further discussion in part 2, I might suggest, but I think it's very useful at this stage to have Ian's summary of the general mood of things for public consumption at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. If there's nothing else on Ian's side, let's just take Ebbsfleet Living Report, which shows that there are continuing efforts going on to maintain the amount of activity that can be sustained at this point. Kevin's on the line because I saw him earlier, so if there are any questions, now's your chance to ask Kevin for any progress. I heard a ding.
That was my phone, unfortunately. Sorry. It might be worth either Jeremy or Kevin saying we had another community board meeting last night, held virtually. I don't know whether Jeremy, as chair, wants to make any comment on that.
I'm very happy to. I didn't want to take any credit away from Kevin in terms of his report first, but that's fine. Listen, we had a really good meeting last night. At least I thought it was. Beautifully chaired, of course, but it was a very good meeting, and I think what we're moving towards now is a sense of real empowerment with the residents who are there. There is a dire need to get more residents involved so that the balance is different. There were still many of us suits there last night, and we're all contributing to the same aim, so our views are all valid, but I think it'd be better still going forward when we've recruited some more local voices to be heard. But honestly, the information that's coming from them and the feedback we're getting from them is enormously valuable. I think it's probably worth tens of thousands of pounds worth of consultancy to actually listen to real people who live here. And they gave us a number of good ideas, and we're progressing a number of them. There was also a good understanding that some things had to wait. There was discussion of an app last night and a lot of technology that, frankly, very maturely, the group last night said, well, look, let's park this because there's other ways of doing this right now. There might be opportunities in the future. So I think that group is really coalescing around the empowerment of residents. And I think once you get more residents on board, you will gradually see it will start to branch out. There was a little bit of a discussion about some of the gripes and pains, but that's because we asked that, to be fair. They don't appear to be a group of people who are looking for negatives. They are really positive, and they've got a very good sense of this place, this community. They're very much a credit to what we're trying to build, and they're wonderful people. But we asked last night specifically about lockdown, and of course that brought some negative issues about that we're going to address. But it's very valuable for them, and I think we've done a very good thing by setting that up. And the more power to its elbow, I think. I don't know if Kevin wants to say anything. He was there.
Yeah, just to say that we've got a current call for new members out, which closes on the 30th of November. We've had a really excellent response so far. So we're getting a lot more interested people who genuinely seem really interested in getting involved, applying this time around. So I think in the new year, it'll be much stronger, more members. And I think some members will want to take action and do things as well.
All very positive. Other comments? No, well, that's, yes, Nick Shattuck.
Well, I was just interested to hear whether the community was buying into the garden village concept, or was it actually purely the current experience of residents?
I think Nick, what we heard last night, Nick, was people who were going back to some very ordinary community values, but it was wonderful to hear it from a new community. I think I've been involved in a few new communities, and sometimes the sterility of the place and the fact that it's very new and modern, there aren't many established community connections, shines through the views of the early adopters and the early arrivers. What was happening last night was people were saying, where's our fireworks? Where's our Diwali? Where's our Christmas work? What can we do? What can we do? So I think what I would say to you is that they are absolutely buying into the sense of the community. Whether the Garden City has anything to offer over and above any other great community, I don't know, but I think they were certainly buying into community and neighbourliness and doing the right thing and being active, and I think that's what you can really hope for, isn't it?
Thank you. We have John Burden and then Sandra. John?
Thank you. I agree with much of what Jeremy said, and I think it was a very positive meeting on the whole. And I think that they are a really good, keen bunch of people that we need to encourage. So I think they will help that community go forward. And I think it really was good. I think if I took two negatives out of it, one was that there was concern amongst some of them been expressed, not necessarily by themselves, but those they were talking to, of their facilities being used by the existing community and potentially some tension with particularly the youngsters from the existing community. I think that's in part is just purely an issue of getting that communication level going a bit better than we've had. And the other thing was there's to a certain degree of frustration that they bought into this image of a garden city with almost they bought the final product as opposed to realising they're coming in at the beginning of it. And I think their enthusiasm to help grow that final product in how that community will come together, I think was something we need to encourage. To not have them thinking that they've bought in too early, because they haven't. They're there to form that spirit. So we need to encourage them. But if I was to say any two negatives came out of it, it would be that. Thank you, Chairman.
Understood. Sandra now?
I think it was a very positive meeting. I think the one thing I would say is that the EDC has listened very hard to the community and is delivering some fantastic infrastructure that was hugely appreciated. So that's the one thing, and we'll hear about the Community Arts Hub soon. The other thing is we heard last night about some things are going less well. Some of them are about tweaks in construction, some of them about areas that are appearing as being less safe, etc. I did talk offline this morning with Mark Pullin this morning about what we can pull back in planning and what needs to be done in other ways, but you mustn't lose sight of that.
Thank you so much. All right, I think that's an excellent report, which will be reflected in the minutes. And so we can move on to communications. Circulated, ready for questions. Any from members of the board? Everyone has read and digested that, so that's fine. And so we move on to the planning report. Nice tick up in deliveries there, so we're back on target. Anything for Mark on planning matters? No, we're all content. And so we have the finance report next. Anything for Gerard on that? All absorbed happily. Yes.
I would just note that in terms of where we're now forecasting our spend, the board will have noticed that we're now back at a capital figure of 41, which is the allocated budget. We had in the last couple of months we've been forecasting a slight dip in that, but we're now confident of achieving the 41 million. So I think that's down to an awful lot of hard work, particularly by Julia and her team, identifying the projects and getting them back on track to achieve that spend. So just wanted to make sure that was flagged to the board, really.
Yes, thank you, Ian. So David Holt.
Yeah, and there's a reference to our annual report and accounts at the end of Gerard's section, and I'm wondering whether Gerard's had any sort of sight of what's been happening elsewhere where pension fund valuations have been coming through. Has there been any sort of smoke coming up from other organisations to demonstrate how the auditors have been handling what patently is a sort of a tricky area at the moment as we go through this pandemic?
We're still awaiting the information, or the auditors are still awaiting that information. It is due by the end of this month. So we wait to see the impact it has on ours and our timing of when we can finally sign the document off and how material the pension numbers impacts are.
But have we had sight or indications of anyone else that is ahead of us in this, where they've had a valuation that may come out the same as ours and how it's been treated by the auditors?
To date, we haven't. We have had flagged up that this timing issue might be a ongoing one for future years, that an ongoing impact of COVID, unfortunately.
Okay, all right, but the non-production of our report and accounts doesn't impact any of our other ability to do business or any of the other things we're doing? Okay, no. Thank you.
We've lost your sound, Michael. No, still can't hear you.
How's that?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have the public side questions and the replies that were circulated. A particularly interesting set, I thought, this month. So we thank the members of the public for their interest. And David, did you have a point on those? Or is that your previous?
No, I think that's an old hand. I've taken it down now, Michael.
Yeah, you have. You have. So members of the board have the responses. Those will now be cleared to appear on the website, and we can end part 1 and cease recording and get ready to move into part 2.